So I really started to figure out my faith for myself as a freshman in college. But I actually grew up in the same church from when I was like 6 to 18 and past there. So I guess I was an exceptionally slow learner. But whenever I figured out my faith, like a year later, I came back to my hometown, and there was this wedding of two people that I grew up with back in this church that I grew up in. And so I'm back at this wedding, and this is, we go through the wedding, and then there's this wedding reception, and there's a handful of people there that I had grown up with, like in church, from when we were little bitty. We did Sunday school together, and church camps, and youth group, and all of this stuff. And one of them was named Millie. Millie was a good foot taller than me, I think, right? So we got this girl named Millie, really nice, and after this wedding reception, we go to the reception in this back hall of the church, and we're sitting there eating, and I'm getting done with my meal, and I'm eating this. Well, we live in Colorado. I grew up in Kansas, and in Kansas you had this thing, and it was like mashed whipped cream with Jell-O and canned fruit. I don't know what the name it is. I actually call it Kansas Baptist salad. It's like the only people who think that this is a food group or something, right? So I'm eating this, and I'm looking around, and Millie is walking around the room. She's grabbing everybody's stuff. She's cleaning up. She's throwing things away. She's taking care of people, seeing if people need water. And I'm sitting there as kind of having new eyes to life because of what Jesus is doing in me. And I'm like, I think she's been serving us for our entire lives, and I never noticed it. I think she's been doing this since we were this old, and I've never even noticed how much she's serving us. And then I had this thought, I don't think I've ever served her. It's like, oh man, right? Serving is one of those things. Putting someone else before you, doing actions in order to serve them is one of those things that when you're a follower of Jesus, you're like, oh man, I got to be doing this. And then you wake up the next day and you're like, okay, I got to be doing this. And you just forget to do it, right? There's lots of ways to serve. Volunteering is just one, but statistics tell us that about 75% of the American adult population never, ever volunteers in any capacity. About the 25% that do volunteer for, on average, about 30 minutes a week. So this is something we struggle with, and I think it's difficult to really replicate what we want to do and replicate how Jesus shows us to serve others. But what if Jesus gave us an example? An example of how to serve that really tears down our misconceptions about serving others and really helps motivate us just to get out there and serve our neighbors and serve our friends and serve our family, serve those who don't know Christ and serve those in poverty. What if he gave us that example? Well, that's what he did in John chapter 13, this story of Jesus washing the feet of others, his disciples. And serving is just a bedrock value in our church. It really is. We've got a great church that serves others. And so as our board put together these value statements about what it looks like to be a part of Mission Lakewood, this is what we wrote about service. We serve faithfully. We serve faithfully with our time and talents, both inside and outside the church. So this is what it means partly just to be a follower of Jesus, but particularly what it means to be a part of the family here at Mission Lakewood Church. We serve faithfully with our time and talents, both inside and outside our church. But isn't it hard to really motivate to do that, right? It is. It's hard to serve. It's hard to remember to serve. It's hard to get that motivation to serve. And so we're going to be looking at John chapter 13, this incredible example of Jesus serving his disciples this morning. So as we jump into this story, let me tell you where we are in the story of John. The Gospel of John, this book of John, is a biography of Jesus' life and his ministry written by one of his best friends. I bet you could guess his name. John, right? So it's this nice biography, and the first half of it is all about Jesus' ministry, his teachings and his miracles and his healings. And then the second half of this book is all about Jesus' death and resurrection. And right in the middle is this John chapter 13. And so the question is, you've got these 12 disciples that have been watching Jesus do this ministry, and now he's about to die and resurrect and ascend into heaven and leave them to do the ministry. And so John chapter 13 is like right in the middle, and the question is, well, how's he going to get them ready? How's he going to get them ready to do the ministry? How's he going to get them ready to take out the gospel? Well, apparently it's washing their feet. That's how he's going to get them ready. He is going to serve them. So John chapter 13, we start in verse 1. We want to look at some different ways that Jesus can help us get motivated to get out there and serve others. The chapter starts like this. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Now, if you read the Gospels, these stories of Jesus' life, one of the curious little phrases Jesus will keep using is, my hour has not yet come. Jesus will tell Jesus, like, why don't you tell everyone who you are? Or why don't you do this? And he'll be like, my hour has not yet come. My hour has not yet come. My hour has not yet come. And now we read, his hour has come. He knows that he is headed to the cross. He's going to be the one who dies as the Passover lamb for all people. And then it says, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. He loved them to the end. So how's he going to get them ready? Well, he loves them to the end. But what is this love? Well, Jesus is about to wash their feet. That's the love he's going to show them. And the next day, so this is right before he goes to the cross. So this day, how's he going to love them? He's going to wash their feet. The next day, he's going to die for them. Wash and die are verbs. So the love that he's showing to them is an action. Love is always a verb and sometimes a noun, but never only an emotion. John will later say it like this as he writes a letter many years later to a group of Christians. He says in 1 John 3:18, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. Love is an action. Let us love with actions. The feeling of love is only made real when paired with an action. It is not simply an emotion. And this is really interesting because it makes it very similar biblically to the definition of serve. Serve and love go hand in hand. To serve is to perform duties or services for another, but love is an action. So love and service go hand in hand. You love by serving. It goes together in Scripture. But the problem is that for us in America, we define love as an emotion. This is why you can say, I love pizza, right? Because you have an emotional pull towards pizza. Or if you're like me, you're like, I love brisket, right? It's something you have an affection for, but it's just a feeling, and that feeling alone is not what the Bible describes as love. And so the Bible's definition of love and our definition of love are really different. And this is easy to see when it gets messy in somebody else's life. Years ago, I was in my church, another church. I was at the church office, and a woman had come in for pastoral counseling, and her husband had recently left her for someone else and had moved out of the state and had been gone for several months. And the night before, they had had a phone call where she and he were talking, and he had said, oh, I love you, and it gave her this glimmer of hope. And so she's sitting there saying, oh, he loves me, and I go, no, he doesn't. And she's like, how can you say that? And I go, just look at his actions. He doesn't love you. His actions are saying something else. Now, you can figure that out, right? You could figure that out just hearing that much of the story, that it wasn't real love because the action isn't there. And so it's easy when it's in someone else's life and it's a messy situation. You know that love needs action. Love is not just an emotion. But then when it's in our own faith and our own lives, for some reason we can't see it. There are too many Christians who say they love God, but then their actions are saying something else. They don't serve others. They don't obey God. They don't share their faith. The action isn't there. So if you're trying to figure out something about our church, like, okay, who is this church in this values series? One of the things is we want to do what we say we do, which is remarkably rare, right? We want to actually put our love, our care into action. We want to put our faith into action. We want to love others. If we want the motivation to serve others, we need to know love is an action. Love is an action. Verse 2, the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Now, here's the really interesting thing about Judas here, okay? Judas had spent 3 years in the University of Jesus Christ, right? Like for 3 years, he followed Jesus and he saw the miracles and he saw the healings and he saw him, stop storms and he saw him, he teach and he heard the parables. Like Judas had all of the information you ever could want, but he wasn't transformed by the gospel. And so he's just hours away from betraying Jesus because information is not transformation. It's different. Is different. You can learn and learn and learn about faith, but if you never go and do the things God tells you to do, you will never be transformed by the incredible, transformational, supernatural power of the Holy Spirit and the gospel of Jesus Christ. You got to go do it. You got to go do it. I love like Christian scholarship, and I'm back in school and I'm learning all this stuff, and I read all these different scholars and these academics, and one of the things that continues to strike me is there are people who know whole libraries of information about the Bible, whole libraries of information about the history of Scripture and about the history of the first century Israelites and all of this knowledge, and they don't believe in Jesus. So you and I, we got to know information's not the same as transformation. Jesus' brother said it like this in James 1:22. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Do what it says. Serve others. Because look, serving others changes lives. When you serve someone, it changes lives. When you will place yourself under someone else, when you will sacrifice yourself for someone, it changes lives. And the first life it changes is yours. It transforms you. Serving other people has the power to change your own heart, to give you humility, to give you a glimpse of Jesus' service for yourself. Too many Christians today are like dietitians who eat at KFC 3 times a day, right? Like, can you imagine that? Think of like a PhD dietitian that gives out advice all day long. They've got all the information about macronutrients and micronutrients, and I don't even know all the words, right? They know all the stuff, and then they go and eat KFC 3 times a day. So what are they doing? Got all the information, but it's not transforming your life. Too many believers were like that. Man, we hear all the stuff, and we read all the stuff, and we read the books, and then we go and we don't do what God says to do. We're not acting on the information we receive. And at our church, we know that serving changes us. It does something within our heart. It transforms us. And so one of the things that, again, if you're talking about who is our church, how are we different, this is this values series, here's one of the things. You will never hear us get up, this is what's happened at every other church I've ever been a part of. You'll never hear us get up and do this. Well, we need 7 new volunteers in kids ministry, so everyone's going to have to volunteer in kids ministry, right? Have you ever heard that at another church, right? Oh, I want to serve. Where are you? Well, we have to have more kids people. Listen, no, we want you to serve where God has blessed you and gifted you, where he's called you to, where he's uniquely placed you, what he's giving the gifts to you, whether that, within our church, we think everyone should be serving their church, but it's where God has you. So it's not about just the needs of the church. It's about how God has given you these blessings. And we think if you use the Holy Spirit's blessings within you to come and just serve in your church in whatever way, that over time as you sacrifice your time and your talent, as God develops those Holy Spirit giftings in you through service, as you're, serving along other side other people, that you'll just be growing in your faith. That'll help you actually grow and transform. If we want the motivation to serve others, we need to know that information is not transformation. Verse 3, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. Meaning, what's about to happen is central to why Jesus has come. It's all coming to this climax in his death and his resurrection. And so they're about to sit down. They're sitting down to this meal, but to understand why Jesus washes their feet, you have to understand it was a little different. They didn't sit down at a big meal like we did, maybe at a big kitchen table around chairs that you buy from American Furniture Warehouse or IKEA, right? They actually would lay down at these meals. They'd kind of recline on the floor or lay down, and they would do it in a circle. And so if you got together with friends for a meal like Jesus is with his disciples here, You would kind of lay down along the floor, and people would bring you food, and you'd hang out and you would talk, and you'd lay there and kind of recline and all this, which means that your feet, if you're laying down, are by your friend's heads, right? Now that's an important detail, because you would be wearing sandals, and you would have walked through the streets all day, every day, and they weren't driving Teslas, they were driving like camels and donkeys, which poop on the street, and you walk through it with your sandals. So, if you didn't wash your feet before you sat down and ate, you might not have any friends, right? Because you're laying down with your feet next to their head. Someone's got to wash these feet. You weren't going to eat before you washed your feet, or you wouldn't have anyone to eat with. So who's going to wash the feet? Verse 4. So he, Jesus, got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist, which is very intentional. Jesus is actually he's putting on the clothes of a servant. He's putting on the clothes of a slave. He's lowering himself. He's humbling himself even in how he's dressing. Verse 5, after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. This is uncomfortable. Not just for Jesus. This is uncomfortable for everyone in the room. It's definitely uncomfortable for Jesus. Jesus had gone from heaven to earth, the seat to his knee on the floor to serve his disciples. Jesus is making himself as a servant. Jesus is washing the feet of Judas, who he knows is about to betray him and lead to his death. That's uncomfortable. In Jewish society, what would always happen is the disciples were supposed to serve the rabbi. So you have this rabbi and you serve him, right? But here, the rabbi, Jesus, is serving the disciples. It's flipping it around, and the disciples are made very uncomfortable by that, as we'll see in Peter later on in the passage. And in Roman society in this day, washing the feet was seen as such a demeaning action because of what it was, that only the lowest slave in your household was allowed to do it. You weren't even supposed to ask your regular slaves to do it. It was that demeaning. And so anyone watching this, to see this rabbi who goes around the country teaching people doing this, man, you'd been so uncomfortable, like, ooh, this isn't right. This is something weird is going on. Jesus is violating every social custom that everyone had in the room. Everybody's uncomfortable. Everybody's uncomfortable. The type of serving Jesus is demonstrating is an uncomfortable assignment. It's an uncomfortable assignment. When we see a need someone has, whether that's someone in poverty, whether that's someone that we know, like a friend who's going through a really hard time, they lost a loved one, there's an illness, we need to pray about whether that need is our personal assignment. And often, our assignments are outside of our comfort zone. Outside of our comfort zone. And it's being outside of your comfort zone that often is what's telling you it's from God in the first place. Serving is inherently an uncomfortable assignment. A few years ago, we were serving, we were going to see just some of the most impoverished people, in Lakewood. And we were going around these motels that tend to be along Colfax, east of here, and this has been some years now. And we were trying to get food to these different families that were living out of these motels. They kind of shift between motels. They're attempting to not sleep out on the streets. And so we're knocking on doors. We're giving out food. We're asking how we can help. We're praying for people. And we come to this door, and I knock on the door, and there's like 3 or 4 of us from the church there. And a dad opens the door, and I kind of look back into the room, and it's a linoleum floor in just the worst motel. And there's a few children that are just sleeping directly on the linoleum. And so we're just standing there, and we're trying to get this conversation going with the dad, and we're handing him food, and eventually we're praying for him, and as we're praying for him, this little kid gets up, and he runs past his dad out there, and he runs right into the arms of one of the women from our church. And oh man, you could just see like the flood of heartbreak come over her, right? So we have this experience, and then the next morning I see her, I'm like, hey, how was that last night? And she's like, wow. She goes, I got to tell you, I almost didn't go. She said, I had never done anything like that before. I almost didn't go. It was so uncomfortable for me, and that's how I knew I should go. It was uncomfortable, and that's how I knew I should go. She got it. Jesus tells us to serve, and usually it is an uncomfortable assignment when it's from him. It is the serving that's easy. It's the serving that's not actually a sacrifice. It's the serving that's right in your wheelhouse. It's the serving that you can put the picture on Instagram and say, #blessed serve. That's the service that you should really be skeptical of, right? It's the service that takes something from you, that takes a sacrifice from you. It's serving. It's doing something kind and loving for that neighbor who doesn't even like you. It's doing something for that coworker who's your rival at work. It's doing something, it's serving, it's giving to someone in poverty that you don't understand, who frankly, when you're around them, it makes you a little uncomfortable. If we want the motivation to serve others, we need to know serving is an uncomfortable assignment. Verse 6, he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Peter does not have the humility to allow Jesus to serve him. Some of us are humble enough to serve others, but we're not humble enough to be served ourselves. While I was writing this message, I was at a Chick-fil-A because I am me, and that's where I eat. So I was at this Chick-fil-A, right? And I'm thinking about like serving others, and so that day I'm trying to like hold doors and have conversations with people and pay for this or that, or like I'm like on my, in my mind I'm thinking, how could I serve others as I work through this story in John 13 of Jesus serving his disciples. And so I strike up this conversation with one of the Chick-fil-A workers that's like cleaning the table next to me, and we're talking, and as she wraps it up, she goes, "Oh, can I get your tray for you?" And I go, "Oh, no, that's okay." And I look back down and I read these verses and I go, "Oh, I just did what Peter did. I just did exactly what Peter did. I had the humility to try to serve others but not be served myself." I looked inside and saw pride. We need the humility to be served. There is no room in a servant's heart for pride. There's no room in a servant's heart for pride. And what looks like modesty can sometimes just be a thin veil hiding pride. But there's something even deeper happening here. In verse 7, Jesus says that Peter doesn't get it. He says, "Peter, you don't understand the meaning of what I'm doing here." What he's doing by washing their feet is giving Peter and all the disciples a picture, not just of what they need to go out and do for others, but a picture of what he's about to do for them so soon on the cross, serving them there. Today, as he washes the feet, Jesus is bending down. But the next day, he's going to be hung up on the cross. In both days, he serves others through utter humility and self-sacrifice. Jesus is saying that just as he's washing away the filth of their feet that night, he'll be washing away the filth of their soul the next night on the cross. But Peter does not have the humility to let Jesus wash away his sin, to wash away his wrongs, without Peter earning it. It takes the humility to be served. It takes humility to accept the gospel of Jesus that says, you are so messed up, you cannot save yourself. You actually need Jesus' service for you on the cross. Peter was rejecting the grace of the gospel. But Jesus says, no, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. You just have to believe that I've done everything for you. You have to believe in what I do for you on the cross. You just have to know me. You just have to have the humility to let me take your tray. To believe in what I've done for you and what I will do for you. If we want the motivation to serve others, we need to have the humility to be served. Because that will tell you a lot about the pride that's still in your heart. Have the humility to be served. Verse 8, Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him. And that was why he said, not everyone was clean, when he had finished washing their feet. Now, Peter is starting to get it. Jesus needs to wash your feet. Jesus needs to wash you and your soul in order to give you this new identity, to cleanse you. And Peter, he is a drama queen. You ever had a drama queen in your group of friends? That was Peter in the disciples, right? He's like, wash my whole. Jesus, I'm not giving you a bath, dude. You don't get what we're doing here, man. Not everyone who receives this new identity of being cleansed by Jesus, only those who believe in him. And this is, if you're someone who's like, hey, I'm back I've been away from church for years and I'm trying to figure out faith again. Or, hey, I've never been in church my whole life and I'm here just trying to hear about Jesus. Let me tell you this real quick so you don't miss this. One of the often things we don't understand about the gospel of the United States is that we kind of assume that somehow Jesus died for everyone, and that means everyone automatically, universally will go to heaven at the end of their day regardless of what they believed and who they thought Jesus was. No. Jesus says, not every one of you is clean. Meaning that while he dies to make available salvation for all, you're only cleansed with the blood of Christ when you come to Christ, when you accept Christ, when you believe in Jesus. That's when you're cleansed of your sin. That's when you have the gift of grace in your life that says, I have come to Jesus. I can know Jesus now and for eternity. So friend, if you have that misconception, please hear Jesus in his own words. You've not yet been cleansed if you do not believe in Jesus Christ. He is the only way. He is the only way to God now and for forever. But what I find interesting too is that some of us, if you are following Jesus, if you do understand that gospel of grace, do you ever get that feeling of like shame? Like I'm dirty still somehow? I think sometimes as Christians we can theologically understand that Jesus has forgiven us, but then somehow deep down in our soul and our hearts we forget that he cleanses us. So there's people in this room that you've made a mistake, or that thing you've done in the past keeps haunting you, that you need to hear Jesus' words that you have been cleansed. And that Jesus' cleansing and Jesus' blood is more powerful than whatever you've done. Jesus' goodness is so much bigger than whatever badness you have in your past. You have been cleansed by the blood of Jesus Christ on the cross. This is who you are. It is your identity. You are clean if you follow Christ. You are washed, but you've been cleansed for a purpose, and it's bigger than just you. So you can go and serve others. Because serving is not just something I do, it's who I am. That's the only reasonable response, right? Jesus comes and he washes their feet, and then he goes and dies for them. He dies for us. He raises from the grave, and it's like he serves us the most sacrificial thing you could ever imagine. Doesn't it make sense we would go and serve others in response? Doesn't it make sense that we would be a servant? That would be our identity. If you want the motivation to serve others, we need to know serving isn't just something we do, it's who we are. So let's do it. Let's do it. Actually go and serve. We don't want to be people for who love is not an action, it's just a feeling. No, we want love to be real. We want to go and serve others. So get out your towel. Get out your towel. And I want to give you 3 areas of life just to think through for you what this looks like in actually practically serving others, okay? Think about proximity, poverty, and parish. I think these are 3 super biblical areas that you can apply this biblical command to be serving others, right? So proximity, those closest to you, like your family, the people you live with, your neighbors, the people who are in close proximity to you. How can you be serving them? How can you serve your spouse, even on the days you're mad at them, right? How can you serve your kids? How can you serve your neighbors, like the people closest to you? Watch what they do for you. Try to take a couple of those things and do it for them. Try to understand who they are and how they need to be served, and do some of those things that at the end of the day, they're like, I felt love. Yeah, love's in action. You served them, right? Do it. Serve those in close proximity. I am convinced that if we cannot serve those who are closest to us, we will never serve those who are far to God, right? It just makes sense. Serve those in close proximity to you. Get out your towel. And then second, serve those in poverty. When you hear about opportunities to serve those in poverty around our church, don't go, oh, that must be that person across the aisle at church is going to take care of it. No, sign up for it. Do it. Be a part of it. And then also we've got a missions trip later this month. Be praying for the missions trip, if you will. It's a form of service. Pray every month for the Micah Project that our church serves through giving every single month and helps. Pray for the clinic down there. Some of us, maybe you haven't heard, our church is the only supporter of a medical clinic that exists in the name of Christ in a small community just outside Tegucigalpa, and it's their only access to medical care that they have for thousands of people. You do that. Like, that's something this church does. Pray for it. Pray for it. Pray for that. Serve those in poverty. It's a biblical command. Get out your towel. And then, how can you serve those in your parish? Parish is a fancy word, mostly because I just wanted to do 3 Ps. But parish is this old word for just those other people in your own church community. Right here. So if this is your church home, right here, how can you serve others? Yes, how can you serve others directly, help people, be there for people, but also serve on a team? And like I said, it's not about twisting your arm to get you to do X, Y, and Z. We've got a lot of stuff that you can serve in right now in this church with kids or production, band or cleaning or greeters or all these different opportunities. How's God gifted you? Are you serving on one of those teams? Because if this is your church home, serve. Get out your towel. Get out your towel. We serve faithfully with our time and talents, both inside and outside our church. We can all serve others in proximity, in poverty, and in our own parish. Get out your towel. Look for needs in these areas. Look for how people need to be served. Pray if it's your assignment, and then actually go and do it. Don't wait another year. Don't wait another month. Go and do it. Serve others. Get out your towel. Jesus got off his seat to serve Judas. Jesus got off his throne to serve you. Jesus got on the floor to serve John, but he got on the cross to serve you. Jesus poured out water to serve Peter. He poured out his blood to serve you. The least we can do is go out and serve others in the name of Christ.